Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how throughout your life you've given so much of yourself, your time, your energy, your patience, you've sacrificed for family, friends, your career, and even strangers? And now, as you enter the later years of your life, you look around and ask yourself, where did all that energy go? And more importantly, who is giving back to me? Make no mistake, the truth is very few people will. Life moves forward and the younger generation is too caught up in their struggles, their pursuits, and their dreams. If you spend your old age chasing their validation, trying to insert yourself into their world, you will only find yourself bitter, exhausted, and ultimately disappointed. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. As time marches on and the years pass by, a profound realization inevitably emerges. It's a hard truth that many of us face as we enter the later stages of life. The realization that very few people will ever return the same level of care and concern we once offered so freely, so selflessly. The sacrifices we made, the endless hours of giving, the unwavering support that was once given to others without hesitation or expectation, often seem to vanish into the ether. The weight of this truth is painful, almost unbearable at times. It stings deeply to acknowledge that many who we once helped so generously may not remember, appreciate, or reciprocate our efforts. We often find ourselves feeling unappreciated, as though all those years of selflessness were nothing but a fleeting memory. We may yearn for gratitude, companionship, or simply a sense of acknowledgement from those we nurtured, only to be met with indifference, neglect, or worse, complete silence. The mistake, however, lies in believing that the world will stop and take notice of our contributions, that somehow our efforts will be seen, recognized, and celebrated. But the harsh truth is that life simply does not work that way. The younger generation is so wrapped up in their struggles, worries, and pursuits that they often fail to see the sacrifices of those who came before them. And why should they? Just as the previous generation was consumed with their battles, so too is the current one. The cycle continues, unbroken, like an endless river that flows with time, taking everything along with it. And so, the question must be asked, after a lifetime of giving, of pouring oneself out for others, will we continue to sacrifice our well-being in the hopes of receiving something in return? Or will we finally, after so much time, choose to invest in ourselves, to reclaim our peace, our energy, our joy? Old age is not a time for seeking validation from others, not a time to chase after those who may not even notice we are gone. It is instead a precious opportunity to reclaim what was once so freely given away: our energy, our peace, and most importantly, our self-respect. It is about recognizing the importance of setting boundaries, of no longer allowing ourselves to be drained by unnecessary obligations, by people who have long taken us for granted. It is the sacred act of letting go of the need to be needed. We've given enough. Now it is time to give to ourselves. This is not a selfish act, but an act of self-care, of choosing to honor the years we have left by prioritizing our happiness and well-being. We have the right to enjoy the simple pleasures of life, whether it's walking alone in the serenity of nature, reading the books that have gathered dust on the shelf, or practicing mindfulness without guilt or fear of being selfish. Self-care in old age is not an indulgence, it is a necessity. Our energy becomes a precious commodity, one that must be guarded fiercely. To continue pouring it into relationships or situations that no longer serve us is to do a grave disservice to our spirit. Reclaiming our energy is not about abandoning others. It's about no longer abandoning ourselves. It's about recognizing that we are the ones who deserve care and attention now, the ones who deserve to be treated with the same respect we've so generously given to others over the years. One of the greatest gifts of growing older is the quiet power of silence. When we were younger, we often felt the overwhelming need to speak, to explain ourselves, to prove our worth to the world. We felt compelled to engage in endless debates, to correct misunderstandings, and to shout louder in hopes that others would finally hear us, finally listen. But with age comes wisdom, the wisdom to recognize the futility in all of this. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. Instead, they listen only with the intent to respond, to validate their own beliefs. And so we come to see that speaking in many cases does little to change minds. Arguments and debates, no matter how logical, often lead to nowhere. People cling stubbornly to their perspectives, unwilling to open their hearts or minds to other possibilities. The energy we spend trying to convince them is energy wasted. And so, with age comes the quiet realization that we no longer need to explain ourselves. The need to defend our choices, our beliefs, and our paths dissipates. We understand that silence, far from being passive, is an incredibly powerful tool. It is not about weakness, it is about strength. It is about control. It is about choosing when and where to speak and recognizing that not every conversation is worth engaging in. Not every thought needs to be verbalized, not every disagreement needs to be responded to, and certainly not every person deserves the energy required to explain themselves. We learn to conserve our energy for what truly matters, for the moments that count, for the people who truly see us for who we are. True power, we come to realize, is not in how much we speak, but in how much we understand without needing to say a word. The art of silence is not about isolation or withdrawal. It is about observing, waiting, and allowing things to unfold without interference. It is about knowing when to speak and when to hold our peace, knowing that silence often speaks louder than words could ever do. With age, we gain a new perspective, one that allows us to step back from the chaos of the world and simply observe. In that stillness, we find a depth of understanding that words could never convey. And so, as we age, we must learn to cherish these moments of quiet wisdom, to embrace the peace that comes from within. No longer do we need to seek validation from others. No longer do we need to prove our worth. The journey has been long and the lessons learned along the way are invaluable. Now, in our later years, it is time to rest, restore, and be at peace with ourselves, knowing that we have already given enough, and that the most important thing now is to honor the gift of our presence. When we are younger, there is an almost instinctive compulsion to intervene in the lives of others. We feel the need to fix what we perceive as wrong, to correct mistakes, and to offer guidance, believing that our experiences have granted us wisdom others desperately need. It's as if we hold the answers, and if only people would listen, we could save them from the heartaches, the struggles, and the mistakes we've faced ourselves. We are driven by the belief that the more we intervene, the more we help, the better their lives will be. We want to warn others, to steer them onto what we consider the right path, to ensure that they don't make the same errors we did. We want to protect them from the suffering we've endured. It's a natural inclination, one rooted in love, care, and perhaps a little bit of pride in what we've learned through our struggles. But as the years pass and we accumulate more life experiences, a painful truth begins to emerge. Most people don't want our help, our advice, or our guidance. They don't want to be told what to do or warned about what they're about to face. They want to learn their lessons, even if those lessons are painful, and come through the same mistakes others have already made. We begin to see that despite our best intentions, no amount of advice will stop someone from walking their path, making their own decisions, and experiencing the consequences. They must go through their journey just as we did. No shortcuts, no easy fixes. This realization is both liberating and humbling. It shifts the way we interact with others, especially as we age. Instead of rushing to correct, to advise, or to guide, we begin to understand the power of silence and detachment. We see that sometimes the best way to help someone is to step back, to give them space to figure things out on their own. It is in that space of non-interference that we find deeper insights into human nature. By observing from a distance, we start to understand people more clearly than we ever could by engaging with them constantly. We notice the subtleties of their behavior, the way they respond to stress, how they treat others when they think no one is looking, and how they handle success and failure. We learn who is truly authentic, who speaks from a place of insecurity, and who speaks from a place of wisdom. The act of observing instead of intervening offers profound clarity. We start to see the truth in people's actions, not just their words. We recognize that while words are often shaped by the desire to be heard or validated, actions are the true reflection of one's character. People reveal who they are not through what they say, but in how they behave when no one is watching. This deeper understanding allows us to discern who is worth our time and energy and who is not. Trying to intervene in the lives of others, especially as we grow older, often leads to frustration and disappointment. When our advice is ignored, or worse, when it's dismissed outright, it creates an emotional burden. The weight of this disappointment can be heavy, especially when we've spent so much time thinking we could offer the solutions to their problems. The frustration grows when we see others making decisions that we know will lead to pain or regret, but they refuse to listen. We spend our energy trying to change people, to convince them to think differently, to see the world the way we do. But the truth is, people will do what they want to do, regardless of how much wisdom we have to offer. They must walk their path. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give them is the space to make their own choices, even if those choices lead them to failure. Stepping back, however, does not signify a lack of care or concern. On the contrary, it is an expression of deep understanding and love. It means recognizing that we cannot control every aspect of someone's life, and that there is beauty in allowing others to take responsibility for their own decisions. It is an acknowledgement that we cannot save everyone, that we must let go of the need to fix, and that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is to give others the freedom to grow, even if that means allowing them to make mistakes. By stepping back, we preserve our peace while still offering quiet support. We can be there for people without drowning them in advice, without becoming their guide. Instead, we become silent witnesses to their journey, offering our support when asked, but no longer pushing our help onto them. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. By focusing on observation rather than intervention, we learn more about the true nature of the people around us than we ever could by constantly engaging. We start to see people for who they are, not for the version they present to the world or the one we hope they are. It is through this quiet understanding that true clarity emerges. We understand people's motives, fears, and desires without them needing to articulate them. We see the subtle cues, the body language, the unspoken emotions that reveal their truths. This clarity, this deeper understanding, brings a peace that no argument, no advice, and no attempt at control could ever provide. Another harsh reality that becomes more apparent with age is the crippling need for approval. For much of our lives, we are conditioned to seek validation from others, to shape our actions, choices, and even our identities based on how we believe others perceive us. We want to be seen as good, worthy, and valuable. We look for approval from family, friends, colleagues, and even strangers. This desire for external validation is embedded deep within us. It is a part of our survival instinct to be accepted by the group, to be seen as valuable, to fit in. But as we grow older, we begin to realize that this external validation is at best fleeting and at worst entirely meaningless. No matter how much approval we receive, it will never be enough. We can never fully satisfy the insatiable hunger for validation that resides within us. In old age, this truth becomes more pressing. We start to ask ourselves, why am I still seeking approval? After all these years, after everything we've accomplished, the lessons we've learned, and the hardships we've faced, why do we still feel the need to prove ourselves? Why do we continue to look for others to validate our worth, to recognize the sacrifices we've made, and the wisdom we've gained? The answer is painfully simple. We fear rejection. We fear being forgotten, irrelevant, or overlooked. We fear that our lives, our contributions, and our existence will be overlooked by those we care about most. We want them to recognize our worth, to appreciate everything we've done. But the sad truth is that most people are too consumed with their own lives to truly recognize our value. They are not looking at us, they are looking at themselves. Waiting for others to recognize our contributions or validate our worth only leads to disappointment and resentment. It's an exhausting and ultimately fruitless pursuit. The moment we let go of this need for approval is the moment we experience true freedom. It's not freedom from others, it's freedom from the need to please them, from the need to be seen and appreciated in the way we think we deserve. Letting go of the need for approval doesn't mean we stop caring about others. It means we stop letting their opinions dictate our happiness. We stop justifying our choices and explaining our actions to people who will never truly understand. We stop measuring our worth by how others see us, and instead we begin to measure it by how we see ourselves. Self-worth is not dependent on external praise. It is something we cultivate from within, through the knowledge that we have lived our truth, and that is enough. In the later years of life, one of the most powerful realizations is that the only opinion that truly matters is your own. This can be a liberating yet sometimes daunting truth. Many people fear that prioritizing themselves at this stage of life might be seen as selfish or distant, but in reality, it's the opposite. It is the ultimate form of freedom. It means making a conscious choice to seek peace over unnecessary conflict, to embrace personal happiness over the unrealistic expectations that society or others may place upon you, and to honor your self-respect over the exhausting and often futile pursuit of approval. The relief that comes from realizing that you do not need to please everyone, that you do not need to constantly seek validation from others, is profound. Not everyone will understand your choices, not everyone will appreciate the person you've become, and not everyone will agree with how you've chosen to live your life. And that is perfectly fine. You have nothing to prove, no one to answer to, and no obligation to meet expectations that no longer serve you. This stage of life should not be spent seeking recognition, accolades, or validation from the outside world. Instead, it should be about embracing your truth, acknowledging your worth from within, and allowing yourself the freedom to simply be. The sooner one lets go of the need for external approval, the sooner one can live fully, freely, and without regrets. True peace is not found in being understood by others, but in understanding yourself. And once that understanding is achieved, there is no longer any need to explain yourself, to seek permission, or to be anything other than who you truly are. The beauty of aging lies in this acceptance, the realization that you have the right to be yourself without having to justify it. As life moves forward, it becomes increasingly clear that personal well-being is not just a luxury reserved for those who are able or free to indulge in it. It is an absolute necessity. In the earlier stages of life, especially during youth, many people neglect their own needs, thinking that they have endless time and energy to give to others, to their work, to their family, and their social obligations. The idea of taking care of oneself often takes a backseat to the demands of daily life. However, as the years pass, the truth becomes undeniable. The body and mind require care, not as an afterthought or something that can be postponed indefinitely, but as the central focus of daily life. If we fail to prioritize our well-being in old age, the result can be a slow, painful decline rather than the vibrant, fulfilling years we deserve. The quality of our later years depends heavily on how we take care of ourselves now. Taking care of one's well-being in old age is an active choice, a series of intentional decisions that promote both physical and mental health. The body, after decades of wear and tear, demands respect. It may not have the same energy it once did, but it is still a miraculous machine that requires attention and care. Regular movement, whether through walking, stretching, or any form of exercise that brings joy, nourishing food that fuels the body rather than depletes it, and sufficient rest are no longer optional in old age, they are essential. Many people mistakenly believe that aging automatically leads to weakness and frailty, but much of the physical decline we associate with old age stems from years of neglect. Those who continue to engage in physical activity, those who mindfully nourish their bodies and make an effort to stay active in their daily lives, often maintain their strength and vitality far longer than those who choose inactivity. Equally important is mental well-being. As we grow older, we come to realize that mental peace and clarity are just as crucial as physical health. This is the time of life when we must let go of unnecessary worries, toxic relationships, and anything that drains us emotionally. The later years should not be filled with stress or conflict. They should be a time to choose peace over chaos, to surround oneself with people and experiences that bring joy rather than frustration. This is the time to take up hobbies that bring fulfillment, to read books that open the mind, and to spend time in nature reconnecting with the world in a way that refreshes the soul. Dwelling on past regrets or continuing to engage in unnecessary arguments only robs a person of the peace they have earned. Holding on to resentment, anger, or old grievances only weighs the heart down. In this phase of life, peace becomes the most precious commodity, and protecting it requires the courage to let go of things, people, and habits that no longer serve a positive purpose. Many people spend their younger years caring for others at the expense of their well-being, often believing that their sacrifices will one day be recognized, that their kindness will eventually be repaid, and that their presence will always be needed and valued. But as we grow older, it becomes increasingly apparent that the world keeps moving forward with or without our consent. If we don't prioritize ourselves, no one else will. The harsh reality is that those who give everything of themselves without caring for their well-being often find themselves overlooked, drained, and unappreciated in the end. No one can give endlessly without receiving something in return, and the well-being of the giver will eventually deplete if it is not replenished. This is the moment in life when we must embrace the fact that prioritizing ourselves is not selfish. It is an act of self-respect. It is recognizing that our physical, emotional, and mental well-being is not optional, but essential for living a fulfilling and dignified life. Choosing to care for oneself, to focus on what truly brings joy, health, and peace, is not only a way to extend life, but to ensure that every remaining moment is filled with dignity, purpose, and fulfillment. The realization sets in: if we don't prioritize ourselves now, no one else will. People spend so much of their lives sacrificing for others, hoping that their kindness will be returned and that their contributions will be recognized. But time reveals difficult truths. As we age, we must accept that the world is often too busy to stop and appreciate everything we've done. We must understand that we deserve to be valued for who we are, not just for what we've given. The greatest act of self-respect is to recognize that well-being is not selfish. It is necessary for a life well lived. As people move on with their own lives, the person who once gave endlessly often finds themselves left behind, unnoticed and overlooked. The energy, the time, the love, and the care that were once so freely poured into others are rarely returned in the same measure. This truth can be painful, and while it may sting at first, it should not breed bitterness. Instead, it should serve as a wake-up call, a reminder that in the later years of life, the greatest responsibility one has is to themselves. There is no greater mistake than neglecting your happiness for the sake of others, who may not even acknowledge the effort you put forth. And yet, so many spend their lives trying to please others, offering their time, energy, and love without ever asking for anything in return. The hard truth is that people often become so caught up in their own lives, their struggles, and their own needs, that they don't even notice the sacrifices made on their behalf. It is in old age that this truth becomes undeniable. If a person do not choose themselves, if they do not actively seek their peace, well-being, and fulfillment, they will be left with nothing but regret. The later years should not be spent waiting for appreciation, recognition, or companionship from people who are too preoccupied with their concerns. There is no reward in continuing to give endlessly without being replenished. And there is certainly no reward in waiting for the love and validation of others who may never understand the depth of your contributions. Instead, the later years should be spent embracing self-sufficiency, reclaiming your independence, and learning to find joy and fulfillment in your own company. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Choosing oneself is often misunderstood. Some may see it as selfishness, but it is not. It is the ultimate act of self-respect. It means acknowledging that there is nothing wrong with prioritizing personal joy, health, and peace. It means understanding that it is not only acceptable but necessary to set boundaries with people who continually take without giving. It means stepping away from relationships, whether familial, social, or professional, that no longer serve you or bring value to your life. It means pursuing the things that bring you true happiness without needing anyone's permission or approval. This act of self-prioritization is not about abandoning others, but about recognizing that after years of giving, it is time to give to yourself. Your peace, your happiness, your mental and physical well-being are worth your attention and care. So many people, particularly as they age, find themselves feeling used, exhausted, or forgotten because they never learned how to put themselves first. They have spent their entire lives accommodating others, sacrificing their own needs, desires, and happiness for the sake of family, friends, and colleagues. The sad reality is that many people continue to live this way until it's too late, and by then, they've become so depleted that there is nothing left to give. They wait for others to notice them, to recognize their worth, to finally show appreciation. But the truth is, life does not slow down for anyone. The world keeps turning, the demands keep coming, and the people who once relied on them move forward with their own lives. If a person continues to wait for others to prioritize them, they will find themselves waiting forever. The only real control they have in life is over their actions, their mindset, and their own decisions. Choosing yourself, particularly in the later years, is not about being selfish or abandoning others. It is about understanding that you are worthy of care, joy, and peace. It is about taking responsibility for your well-being and recognizing that, just as you once gave to others, it is now time to replenish what has been spent. The moment you begin to choose yourself, to step away from the patterns of people-pleasing and self-sacrifice, is the moment you start to reclaim your life. You regain the power to decide how you spend your time, who you spend it with, and what truly brings you joy. This is not an act of rebellion or defiance. It is an act of self-love, a realization that your happiness and well-being are just as important as anyone else's. The later years of life can be some of the most fulfilling, peaceful, and empowering if they are spent embracing this truth. There is freedom in realizing that you do not need anyone else's approval to live your life the way you want to. You can choose to enjoy the things that bring you happiness, seek out the experiences that nourish your soul, and build relationships that are grounded in mutual respect rather than one-sided giving. The only person you need to answer to is yourself. Once you stop waiting for others to validate your worth, you begin to see the incredible power that lies within you. You become the architect of your own life, and that is the most precious freedom of all. So step into this next chapter with the confidence that you are deserving of peace, joy, and self-respect. Choose yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of a deep understanding of your worth. Embrace the opportunity to nurture yourself, to live fully, and to let go of the burden of seeking validation from others. In doing so, you will find the greatest gift of all, a life lived on your terms, filled with fulfillment, purpose, and most importantly, peace. Now that we've reached the end of this powerful message, take a moment to reflect. What have you learned from this? What's one piece of wisdom that has truly resonated with you, something you'll carry forward into your own life? Share that in the comments below. We'd love to hear what's inspired you. If you found value in this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We can't wait to see you in the next video.